Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Today, inshallah, Jazakumullah khair. MashaAllah, you're making the circle. Everything is ready, inshallah. Jazakumullah khair. So, from now on, inshallah, we will restart the whole Quran, inshallah. And we will be doing this, Allahu A'lam, until which ayah will be the end, Allahu A'lam. Allahu A'lam. Today, inshallah, my intention is to do an introduction to Quran, because there's a lot of things we always go into the Quran and do the interpretation as good as we can, extract the wisdom and the ayat, what it tells us to do, not to do, what it means. And alhamdulillah, we've done the best we can. But today, because we are going to restart the Quran, inshallah, from Surah Al-Fateha. So I thought before we start this one, I want to give a bit of a brief, because Quran is, subhanallah, is a book that has massive amount of wisdom, massive amount of messages. It's a lot of things to say. And any of actually those people who manage to give interpretation or thoughts about the Quran, they always have an introduction, and it's always very good. And he is the last book. And all the scholars and all the people in their interpretation to the Quran, in terms of the old or the new one, by the way, because there's old like Ibn Kathir or Razi and others, and then the modern one like Dhilal al-Quran, Sayyid Qutb, Sha'rawi, Khawatir al-Quran, and Muhammad al-Ghazali in terms of the briefs. So there's modern and there is old ones. And there is actually very interesting when you read and compare, you will always find a distinct difference between the two. Difference in the language and difference in the depth of understanding of this one. Sometimes they take you very deep in the language itself, in terms of the grammar and what it means, and why it was like this and so on. And others take it from the perspective of the revelation, what's the story behind it and so on. So there's a lot of different point of views of everything actually in the Quran. And the Quran, as you know, was mentioned in the Quran as Quran wa Kitab. And for those two, the Quran was mentioned or understood up front during the Sahaba that it is something to read and memorize and to write. These two things get us to the question, how did this Quran came to us? There's a difference of about 1400 years. So 1400 years until we have that. And the big question, what guarantees that this is the one that was revealed upon Sayyidina Muhammad alayhi salatu wasalam in 1400? Which is a very logical question. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala told us in the Quran, إِنَّا نَحْنُ نَزَّلْنَا الذِّكْرَ وَإِنَّا لَهُ لَحَافِظُونَ. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala hafadh al-Quran. So it wasn't like Torah and Injil that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala keep it to the rabbi and the priests to keep it, which is they completely failed to do that. And it has been changed drastically. Like in the Quran is different. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala hafadh. And how the Sahaba learned from Rasulullah alayhi salatu wasalam. So they have actually developed a methodology all the way through. So they started is, as you know, the Arabs originally, they are not writers, they are not readers, they are memorizing. That's the main, you could say, capability that massively known. Yani imagine Rasulullah alayhi salatu wasalam stand, say a speech, and then someone, after he's done, he's going to tell you exactly the speech from the start to end. Hearing it one time. They are used to do that. Their memory was like a photographic memory. They absorb the words in their, that's subhanallah, the Arabs was all about this. And that's why they managed to memorize the whole Quran. They memorize it, one ayah, as and when the ayah is revealed. They always have sessions directly with Rasulullah alayhi salatu wasalam. So they've lived two things. They've left the revelation, which is the tanzil, and as I always told you, the sequence of the tanzil or revelation is completely different than this Quran. Okay? So it has different, and you could read this one. Imam al-Suyuti has a book about tanzil al-Quran, and he's going to tell you the sequence of how this Quran was revealed in terms of sequence. And then after this, every time Sayyidina Jibreel comes down to Rasulullah alayhi salatu wassalam and then put one ayah after the ayah, one ayah after the other, and then complete a whole surah. Okay? So that is how it was, you could say, like assembled as a surah. So given the time scattered. Some of the surah, for example, Surah Al-An'am has been revealed, all of it in one shot. Okay? So that's different. But the normal is actually one ayah and then a couple of ayat and then after this. And that's why the sequence is completely, revelation is different. But it has been assembled one after the other. And the Sahaba who lived this one, or who lived this era of revelation, knows that this ayah was before this and this ayah was in terms of revelation. But then they know finally this ayah now is in this surah, and that's the final version of the Quran. Now, and actually the Sahaba, they write their own like copies of the ayat. Everyone has it, which is good, that's not haram. But as I said, the Arabs has not been writers. They mainly depend on their memorizing. What happens actually, even Sayyidina Abu Bakr is the same, Sayyidina Umar who has been the Khalifa, but Sayyidina Uthman during his time found that there are started now, because as you know, during Sayyidina Umar, Islam has spread big time and it's gone to Persian. So the whole Persian Empire has been completely taken during Umar's time. So that means now we have non-Arabs coming into Islam. And there was a challenge because you have to teach them. Now, their Arabic may not be that great. Well, Sayyidina Uthman radiallahu anhu started this exercise, Tajmi' al-Quran. So what they've done, they've created the methodology. And the methodology is every single ayah to be documented has to have two main sources. One, a written copy. Two people who memorize it and they know it by heart. So imagine we have more than 6,000 ayah in the Quran, and every single ayah, before it's documented, that rule has to be applied to enable them to get the whole Quran documented. Because the plan was to create, and he created 4 copies, send it to different locations. 1 copy still live in Al-Azhar. If you go to Cairo, still the copy that has been sent since Sayyidina Uthman radiallahu anhu, kept as is. So that was a very big challenge, because you have to get a copy written from someone trusted, and has to be sometimes 2 copies for the same thing. That's 1. 2, every ayah has 2 people like witnesses. And they have done that exercise in the whole Quran. But then they come with 1 ayah. The last ayah fi Surah At-Tawbah. They found a written copy. But then they found only 1 person. And there's no second person for this ayah as a witness. Subhanallah. That 1 person has a story. Subhanallah. وهنا this story is like, subhanallah, I'll tell you the story, and the story, if you find subhanallah, as if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make the story to happen, to make that Sahabi is the only witness upon this single ayah. Number 1, what is the story and who is that Sahabi? Khuzaymah ibn Thabit. Khuzaymah ibn Thabit, he is one of the Sahaba during Rasulullah alayhi salatu wassalam. And the story that makes him very famous, Rasulullah alayhi salatu wassalam found Arabi. Arabi who's people who was living mainly in the desert, but came in every now and then to the city. And he has a horse. And he told him that I'm going to buy this horse. How much do you want me to buy it for? In reality, it has been like two versions, but it's exactly the same. The one very common version that Rasulullah ﷺ agree with him on the price, and he paid him. That's one version. And the other version is that says that Rasulullah ﷺ told him, okay, so I'll get you the money. While he was taking the horse, and Rasulullah ﷺ, the Sahaba doesn't know that Rasulullah told him that I'm going to buy it for a certain amount of money. So they started to ask him, do you want to sell the horse? And then they started to give him offers. What about this price? What about that price? Now, Islamically, if you sell it, if you sell it with the word with one, it's finished, it's done, it's sold. So Al-Arabi started to ask Sayyidina Muhammad again, Ya Muhammad, are you going to buy? And he said, yes, I am going to. Didn't I tell you this? No, you haven't told me. He denied that Rasulullah told him, I'm going to buy. For Rasulullah ﷺ told him, no, I told you. And in the other version of the story, that Rasulullah even paid him, and he denied the payment. The dialogue between him and Rasulullah ﷺ, there was nobody. There was nobody. So the Arabi, this one, asked Rasulullah, do you have a witness for what you said? That's for Rasulullah. Rasulullah doesn't have any witness. So Khuzaymah ibn Thabit stand and said, yes, I've seen him, and he told you. So Al-Arabi was shocked. He said, okay, so you have a witness? Okay, then I've sold it. So Al-Arabi went. For Rasulullah called Khuzaymah, you haven't been here. You haven't seen me because I was alone. How can you say this one? Listen to what he said, because what he said tells you the amount of trust and faith in Rasulullah alayhi salatu wasalam. He told him, Ya Rasulullah, صدقناك في أمر السماء, meaning we believed you and followed you and what you've said that came from Allah, from sky. How can I do not believe you in just buying a horse? How could that happen? For Rasulullah alayhi salatu wasalam was extremely happy with that conclusion and faith in him, in faith and in trust in Rasulullah alayhi salatu wasalam. And he gave him that reward, huge reward. He said, among the Sahaba, he said, Khuzaymah, if Khuzaymah is a witness for something, he's enough. So that means everything in Islam, by the way, needs two witnesses, except for Khuzaymah ibn Thabit. If he say it, he equals two people. So that's how the story happens. So when they came to Ahd, Sayyidina Uthman radiallahu anhu, and they came with that single ayah, which was the only one who knows it was Khuzaymah ibn Thabit, and they've asked him, and he said yes. And then the writer actually said, there's no other one, but Khuzaymah, we have been told he equals two. And that means that's it. So this is the story of, in terms of collection in the Quran, how it happens during Sayyidina Uthman radiallahu anhu, and then they started to get those 4 copies to different places in terms of to use that one. Now, as you know, and I probably told you this before, the Quran, when you look at it, inshallah, may Allah give you all the opportunity to see the first copy, it doesn't have any punctuation. No kasra, fatha, dhamma. 1. It doesn't have any dots. So you don't know it's a noon or a ta or a ya. There's no dots. That's how the Arab, because then you look at it, he knows this is a noon, this is a ya, this is a ta. That's it. Because that was developed literally during Khalifa Abdullah ibn Marwan, which is actually the one who did this one who Al-Hajjaj ibn Yusuf, who was the governor of Iraq during that time. So that literally happens probably 200 or 150 years after this story. The Quran was mainly in the heart, mainly. And something else that you have to understand, the Quran itself, when the Sahaba started to spread the Quran, whatever it is. So for example, in Persian, and then after Persian, actually during Hajjaj ibn Yusuf, they went actually far east. In terms of actually Pakistan and India, it was really big during Khalifa Abdul Malik ibn Marwan, and before him Muawiyah, and then it goes west to reach Algeria, Iraq, and then eventually actually Andalusia, which is Spain, all of that. So how come the Quran exactly the same, but it reaches all of that? Because it was in the heart of the Sahaba. So the difference that you know, and I'm sure you know, have heard about it, is the way it is recited. And the ways of recited has been authenticated ways. And that's related to the different ways that the Arab pronounce the words. Okay? And that's what we know it now, that riwayat Hafs, wa riwayat Warsh, wa riwayat Qalun, all of this. Because there is 10 readers, and every reader had 2 narrators. So literally you have 20 narrators all over, and 10 readers. Any way that you read is right, is the right way. There's no problem. Okay? And it depends on the area where you are, by the way. So for example, if you go to Egypt and all the East, it's very much riwayat Hafs. And if you go to the North Africa, where they're going to Qalun and Warsh. And so all of that, you will hear the same Quran, but in a different way. Okay? So that's how it's done. So the Quran spread just in the hearts of the Sahaba. Well, subhanallah. So for example, even if you take one way of reading, so how someone in Iraq reading riwayat Hafs is exactly the same as someone in Pakistan. Exactly the same. وهنا جاء القرآن ثبت بالتواتر. What does it mean, the word tawatur? Because tawatur is exactly the same hadith. التواتر means different sources, but it's exactly the same. Why? Because those sources are coming from one person, Muhammad ibn Abdullah, alayhi salatu wassalam. So that's why the Sahaba has been, he is the teacher, and he taught Abdullah ibn Abbas, Ali ibn Abi Talib, and the young Sahaba, Usama ibn Zayd, and all of those ones, Zayd ibn Thabit, the young one. The young ones was the more active because they are young, and they've started. Anas ibn Malik, for example, when he started with Rasulullah, when his mother took him to be with Rasulullah, he was about 10 years. So he lived with Rasulullah. He was probably the nearest in terms of, I've seen the revelation, how it happens. He went to many of the houses of the wives of Rasulullah alayhi salatu wasallam. I've seen it live, inside out. So he was one in terms of memorizing the Quran. Every one of these, after Rasulullah spread in whole around the world, teach those ones or any of his students the way Rasulullah alayhi salatu wasallam. And that's why you probably hear the word, he has a ijazah. What ijazah means? Ijazah means that he has a teacher. And the Quran, you have to do it. It's called what talaqqi. Talaqqi means what? Yani even Rasulullah alayhi salatu wasalam. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala told us, إِنَّكَ لَتُلَقَّى الْقُرْآنَ مِنْ لَدُنْ حَكِيمٍ عَلِيمٍ. Sayyidina Jibreel alayhi salam sit down, Rasulullah alayhi salatu wasalam sit in front of him, repeating the Quran. Repeating the Quran. وكان في رمضان, repeat the Quran multiple times, and reading in different ways. يعني what we call it riwayat Hafs, riwayat Warsh, riwayat, all of these riwayat Rasulullah alayhi salatu wasalam, and everyone learned from Rasulullah this way of reading to the Quran, and he taught it to the others. And that's why this Quran is exactly the same copy, whether it was in India or Pakistan or was in Morocco or wherever it is, because it started in the heart. And up till now, it's still in the heart. ولذلك, for example, in Egypt, there is always, this is called the continuous committee of the Quran. Any copy of the Quran to be printed has to go and have authentication. And those people, and probably one of them was actually here somewhere, it's called Sheikh Nasr Rizq, he was one of those people. Those ones who authorize, so they have to take, so for example, whoever is going to print the Quran, which riwayat Warsh, for example, they start from start to end to review exactly this one. So that means it's allowed in terms of to get the permission to be printed, okay? To be very, very accurate. There's nothing fatha, or there's nothing called an error that doesn't exist in the Quran. That's how kept as is since Rasulullah alayhi salatu wasalam up till now. Also. So that's how it came, as I said, it started from Rasulullah alayhi salatu wasalam up till now. The miracle of the Quran is the Quran itself. Or the miracle of Rasulullah alayhi salatu wasalam is the Quran itself. Because any of the books before Rasulullah has a time limit. So that means Sayyidina Isa, for example, has the Bible. That is the book. But the miracle was his actions. So for example, he managed to resurrect someone from death and ask him and talk to him. He managed to do a lot of this. And those magic actions, very physical, if you look at it, very physical actions, for a non-believers to believe that he is a messenger of Allah. Okay? Sayyidina Musa is exactly the same. Sayyidina Salih is the same. And so on. So they have what they call it al-manhaj, that means the book that they have, and they have the miracles which is physically to them. And that's why the book has a limited life. And the miracles is only for those people who have seen it. Now, you can't say, for example, during Sayyidina Isa, that everyone have seen the miracle. No. Those ones who have attended and been face to face to him have seen it. Others may not be. The same as in Sayyidina Musa. When he challenged Fir'aun, and he called him, موعدكم يوم الزينة أن يحشر الناس ضحى. Does that mean all the people in Egypt came in and that? No. Whoever they have reached the message to him, he attended. Now there must be a lot of people who hasn't attended. They haven't seen anything. So their miracles is very much physical, different than the book. Now, Quran is different. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala revealed the Quran and make the miracle in the Quran. So that means why? Because that book is meant to live until the day of judgment. And there will be different generation. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows that the technology will take place and all the changes is going to happen. And there will be massive amount of language later on. And that's why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala put the miracle in the Quran itself. Not out of the Quran. And that's why some people ask, but Rasulullah has miracles. Yes, true. But those miracles, who told you about the miracles? Sahaba, who are already believers. Yani they are believers. They do, whether Rasulullah, whether they have seen the miracle or not, they are already believers. So that means they don't have to know the miracle to believe. So that means different. And that's why Rasulullah have not used all his life any of the miracles in front of an unbeliever, because he wasn't ordered to use it. The miracle happens because the Sahaba was around him. For example, when he take, for example, some of the those little stones, and Rasulullah make the stones itself, put it in the hands of the Sahaba to hear tasabih, subhanallah, tasabih al-hajar. And those Sahaba who attended this scene, they have told you. But they are already Sahaba, they are already believers. There's many like this. And that's why the miracle itself is not for the purpose for the non-believers to believe. Okay? And the deniers who doesn't believe in what Rasulullah said, even So they don't believe, but the leaders told them, لا تسمعوا لهذا القرآن والغوا فيه. Yeah, what does it mean? Yani don't listen to the Quran and make noise. When the people start to read it, make noise. Why? Because the Quran itself touched the heart directly. The words touch their heart. Keep in mind something. Those ones, the Arab, that's their language night and day. They don't need to ask what's the meaning. They've been impressed with the language, with the words, with the structure of the sentences, with what it means. So that's why it directly, when they, for example, the end of Surah Subhanallah Al-Najm, Rasulullah alayhi salatu wasalam was reading it في حوض الكعبة, that means around the Kaaba. There was a lot of non-believers around him. And he was reading it. And then the last ayat was فَاسْجُدُوا لِلَّهِ وَاعْبُدُوا. Sajad, everybody. More than half of them are not believers. فَاسْجُدُوا, it touches the heart. فَاسْجُدُوا, they believe in Allah, but they make those gods in stones or whatever it is to make them near to Allah. But they believe inside, and that's why Allah told us in the beginning of Surah Al-Zumar, إِنَّا نَعْبُدُهُمْ, that means we worship those gods, لِيُقَرِّبُونَ مِنَ اللَّهِ زُلْفًا. So that means they believe in Allah, but that is the wrong way of believing in Allah. So that means when they've heard فَاسْجُدُوا لِلَّهِ وَعْبُدُوا سَجَدُوا. إِلَّا Umayyah ibn Khalaf was the only one. He didn't. Arrogance. That's it. So that's different. So the words touch their heart. And they always have the argument with Rasulullah alayhi salatu wassalam. And that's why Allah told us in Surah Yunus, وإذا تتلى عليهم آياتنا قال الذين لا يرجون لقاءنا ائت بقرآن غير هذا أو بدله. So that means come with a different Quran or change these words. But why they said that? They said that because this Quran is like shaking us from the inside out. It changes all what we've lived and inherited. So that means change it. So the next ayah, Allah told Rasulullah, قُلْ ما يكون لي أن أبدله من تلقاء نفسي. It's not like my Quran, I'm writing it at home and then come back to you. Well, Rasulullah, keep in mind, his life, he wasn't a poet. He wasn't like, as we said, like our speaker. No, he wasn't. He was a normal Arab. He was very known as a trustworthy, As-Sadiq al-Amin. That's how they title him. But he wasn't a person who's talking about in terms of language and all of, no, he wasn't. But then when the Quran came in, they found, wait a minute, this is like very strong sentences, very strong language. And that's why they said, ائت بقرآن غير هذا أو بدله, change this Quran. Or do a change or come up with something else. And then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala told him, قُلْ ما يكون لي أن أبدله من تلقاء نفسي. It's not my decision. I haven't written that at home and then come back to you. ما يكون لي أن أبدله من تلقاء نفسي. It's a wahy. This is a revelation from Allah. إني أخاف إن عصيت ربي عذاب يوم عظيم. قل. That's the message. قل ما تلوته عليكم لقد لبثت فيكم عمرا من قبل. So that means I've lived, Rasulullah lived 42 years and I've never said anything about the Quran or nothing has been revealed. But now that is revelation has happened and that's why I'm telling you. أفلا تعقلون. Have you ever thought about it? If he is a good speaker or a good poet, then that means Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make him ما أنا بشاعر. He's not a person to develop poetry. That's not. Rasulullah have never ever done that. Why? That has a wisdom. Because if he was actually, they would say, okay, then that means the Quran has been, that's his own words. He's developed it because he's, in terms of very articulate in Arabic and he can come with all of this poetry, then he can actually invent the Quran. But he wasn't. And that's why the Quran was completely but because it's very strong, because it's changing their heart, changing what they believe, and that's why they don't want this. And the main thing, which is you need to understand it, is the leaders. The structure of as you know, Mecca, Medina, or actually the Arab Peninsula has not been part of the Persian Empire or the Roman Empire at all. And even when you read the history of the Arabs in terms of for example, Egypt was known like the pharaohs, and then after the pharaohs, some of the Romans in the north, only probably in Alexandria. So that means there has been multiple invaders, which is true, to Egypt. As an example, Iraq is the same thing. Since Sayyidina Ibrahim, there has been invader. Sham, which is Syria, has been exactly the Arab Peninsula hasn't. You will find actually there's nobody who was invading the Arab Peninsula and to get nothing. No. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the only story that Allah already told us about it, which is Abraha, when he was trying to knock down Kaaba. That's it. He wasn't coming invasion as in to occupy Mecca. No. He just wanted to knock down the Kaaba. That's it. That was his purpose. And then get out. And then he fails. And that's why subhanAllah, this has a wisdom, by the way, if you look at it. Because in Egypt, in Iraq, in Syria, and all of that, even in Yemen, there has been a lot of culture inherited years and years and years from the history. The Arabs, those people who had lived there, has not. There's no culture to inherit from the Roman or from, no. And that's why even subhanAllah, even the Jews who lived in the north of Medina, they were not Arabs originally. They just came in to live in this area. That's it. And that's why when Rasulullah alayhi salatu wasalam came in the Quran in Mecca, the people in Mecca, if they want to ask a question about religion before Sayyidina Muhammad alayhi salatu, they always go to Ahlul Kitab. So they go to Medina. Muhammad, those are the Jews who live in there, because they know the people of the book. And I've told you before, Waraq ibn Nawfal, who is the cousin of Sayyidah Khadija radiallahu anha, he was one of the, even he's from Mecca, but he learned Al-Kitab, and he was one of the people of the book. Even he's not a Jew, he's Arab, but he learned and he knows that these are the words of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And he was the one who believed that there is a prophet, Sayyidina Muhammad alayhi salatu wassalam. So that means when Rasulullah ﷺ came to the Quran, there was nobody during that time to tell him, yeah, but we've heard these words from the Torah. There was no, because those Arabs have not educated about Torah or Injil or anything like this. And that's why, for example, to check the authentication, or actually to check that the authentication or that Muhammad ibn Abdullah is a real prophet, what they have done, they went up to the people of the book, the Jews in the north of Medina, and they asked them, we have now a man who claims that he is a prophet, and we want to check, do you have something in your book to tell us about this? And then they've told him, yes, we have. Ask him, which we all know, about 3 questions. 1, Ruh, يسألونك عن الروح. 2, ask him عن أهل الكهف. 3, ask him about the king who's go around, Dhul Qarnayn. These are the 3 questions they asked Rasulullah alayhi salatu. So they came, the Arabs, as I told you, they don't know. And they came from Medina to Rasulullah to challenge him. We need you to answer those questions. Now, Rasulullah doesn't know. He doesn't know the answer about these things. With the key one, which is the one that is very critical, is the first one, which is Ar-Ruh. In the Ruh, even in Torah, has not been explained what is that. And they want to ask something that has no explanation. Where are you going to get it from? And that's why the Quran said what? يَسْأَلُونَكَ عَلَى الرُّحِ قُلِ الرُّحِ مِنْ أَمْرِ رَبِّي وَمَا أُوتِيتُم مِنَ الْعِلْمِ إِلَّا قَلِيلًا. And that answer, even very short, was shocking. That means this man is talking the right way that the Torah is saying this. Nobody knows what's Ruh. Nobody. And then they give ask about Surah Al-Kahf, and as you know, Surah Al-Kahf has all the people of the cave and who are they and so on, and ask about Dhul Qarnayn, and then he told them about it, and that is exactly the same as in Torah. But the question is, have they followed and believed in La ilaha illallah Muhammad Rasulullah? No. This is one of the key things, by the way, in terms of the belief. A lot of people, they have seen the miracle itself, but they haven't believed. For example, which is I'm sure you know the story. The people who asked Sayyidina Salih, they've told him, we want you to get a camel out of this. Subhanallah, yani they've given him a specific stone in the mountain. If you are a prophet and you believe in God and so on, show us this miracle. Get us a camel out of this. Now, this is one of the big mistakes anybody does. Why? Because you are challenging and you are asking for a miracle. You're self-asking, which means that if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will give you the miracle, then it's a test. It's not going to be for free. Allah gave them the camel and they gave them the test with it, and the test was severe with them. Exactly the same. The people who asked Sayyidina Isa, and here they ask him, when you see, in a very impolite way, هل يستطيع ربك أن ينزل علينا مائدة يعني, imagine this, someone asking, can your God do this? That is not a question to ask about Allah. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, when you ask him بأدب. في أدب مع الله وأدب مع رسول الله. You have to show that respect with Allah and Rasulullah. For Allah, okay, you are going to take the banquet, which is the Ma'idah and all of that. But then if you don't believe and you don't follow, there will be severe torture. Every miracle, if you ask. Now, if you compare this and compare it with the Sahaba, none of the Sahaba, this is something probably you need to know, none of the Sahaba has been asked Rasulullah, show us something. The source one that, subhanallah, شقاق القمر, which says, اقتربت الساعة وانشق القمر. Rasulullah عليه الصلاة والسلام told them, look at the moon. He pointed to them, and they've seen it split. The Arab themselves, that is a miracle for them. They've split in two. They said, but that's probably magic. But the wise ones, they said, wait a minute. Check the people who are coming from out of Mecca. Have they seen the moon split or not? And they wait, and they send people out, people are traveling, coming out of Mecca, and they've said all of them, have you seen? They said, yes, we've seen it. The moon split. And after some time it comes back. Subhanallah. And then they said, then it's not magic, because magic happens for all the people who have seen attended, but those ones have seen it, then it's not magic. But then ask yourself, have they all believed? No. Subhanallah. And that's why miracles is not always the reason. Subhanallah, even in our modern days, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala told us many scientific facts. The Quran has actually massive amount of scientific facts. Because scientific facts is a fact. It's because it's created by Allah. As I always say, and I hope all our young people to understand this. We always make, for example, we said that whoever the inventor invented electricity, or invented this one, or invented. The reality is, those people are smart. Allah gave them the knowledge, but they have not invented, because whatever they've invented is actually a creation by Allah. But Allah gave them the knowledge to discover this from the knowledge of Allah. See, subhanallah, when I've been in year 11 or year 12, our teachers learn of this. They always told us, keep in mind, physics that we are studying in school is the same physics for the European, for the American. It's the same physics. The only difference that we believe this physics is a creation of Allah. That's it. That's the big difference. It's the same physics, but that's the creation of Allah. Allah gave us the knowledge to learn this, but it's all Allah's knowledge. That's why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala told us in Quran, and if you repeat this ayah, always remember, قُلْ لَوْ كَانَ الْبَحْرُ مِدَادًا لِكَلِمَاتِ. Allah is telling you, if all the sea and the oceans is an ink for the words of Allah to write all the words. When I say all the words, that means ma kana, whatever can. And what happens now? Whatever is going to happen later on, with all the details and all the creatures and all the sciences, ma nafidat kalimatullah. The whole water, which is the ink, will dry, finished, and the words of Allah is not finished. Because it's endless. Endless. Subhanallah. That's why Rasulullah alayhi salatu wassalam fil hadith told us, Al-Quran هو خبر نبأ ما بعدكم خبر من قبلكم حكم ما بينكم. That's like a very good look in the view of the Quran. This is the hadith. That means it is telling you of what happens before you. It's telling you what's going to happen after you. And it's the rule. How do you manage your life? حكم ما بينكم. The rules that you can apply to get your life settled and maintained according to Quran, according to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That's how the Quran is. This hadith is telling you exactly what is the significance of Quran. As a Muslim, that's my book. طيب, هنا ask a question, which actually has been a very interesting question someone asked it. But Rasulullah told us the Quran. But at the same time, he told us the Hadith Qudsi, and then told us about Hadith Nabawi. So that means there are 3 narrations. So how the Sahaba managed to differentiate between this and this and this? And that's a very good question. Very good question. The Sahaba who has been writing everything from Rasulullah alayhi salatu wasalam, this one who lived with him, he told them, remove any hadith. That means ask me, when he finds that they've documented hadith, remove it. Only keep Quran. And from that one, the Sahaba knows now, that's the narration, the words of the Quran. Those are the narration of the hadith. Aha. Even the Sahaba, subhanallah, they have the power to memorize all of that, by the way. But with this lesson, they know now that that's the Quran, which is directly the words of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That's a hadith Qudsi. Well, hadith al-Qudsi, the words of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has been said by Rasulullah alayhi salatu wasalam. Hadith al-Nabawi. That's the words, also words of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, but Rasulullah alayhi salatu wasalam said with his own words. You see that there's a big difference between the 3. For example, when Allah said hadith Qudsi, أنا أغنى الشركاء عن الشرك. أنا means Allah. أغنى الشركاء عن الشرك, meaning that when you do something for Allah, you have to be sincere and do it 100% for Allah. Don't make it, okay, I'll do it for Allah, but I'm expecting the people to say, Allah, great, Allah, thank you very much. They have been, no. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying, you know, if you do this, it's all in dunya. Allah is not going to give you a single reward. That's a hadith Qudsi, to teach us sincerity with Allah. That's a hadith Qudsi. Rasulullah alayhi salatu wasalam told them. That's why في the narration of the hadith, there is actually always kitab hadith al-Qudsi. That's different than hadith al-Nabawi, which is narrated by Bukhari or Muslim. And they are already the same, but they have also a hadith Qudsiya, which is this one. The hadith al-Qudsi is always Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is talking. And that's different than Quran itself. Okay? So those 3 narration, Rasulullah alayhi salatu wasallam was always, and that's why Imam Shafi'i said about the Hadith al-Nabawi, they said, al-Hadith wahy. For example, when someone come to Rasulullah alayhi salatu wasallam and ask him, when Sayyidina Musa, he went to Madian. And then he gave him, as you know the story, when he helped the 2 girls in terms of getting the water, and he told them 8 or 10 years. And he asked Rasulullah, so eventually, Ya Rasulullah, did he stay 8 or 10? For Rasulullah alayhi salatu wasalam doesn't know. So he asked Jibreel, so look at this. Jibreel knows the answer. but he wasn't given the permission to tell Rasulullah. You see, يعني, it's a very, very, very specific. He knows the answer, but he hasn't been given the permission to answer to Rasulullah. He has to get the permission. See, he went to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and he came back and he told him it was 10 years. It's very precise to know that even a simple thing like this, there's a difference between Sayyidina Jibreel, because he knows this one. He already exists since Adam, up till now. So whatever happens on earth, he have already seen it. And he knows the answer, but he knows that there is a limit. He has to get a permission to come down and to tell Rasulullah. Not only this, يعني Rasulullah, Sayyidina Jibreel, always Rasulullah always loves to sit with him. He loves him. يعني subhanallah, Sayyidina Jibreel alayhi salam, يعني, I don't know how to explain it to you. It's like a lovely friendship between the two. I can't say a person, because as you know, Sayyidina Jibreel is not a person, he's a malak. Malakun kareem, يعني. So he told him, why don't you يعني, come to us often, every time? Then he told him, as Quran told us, وَمَا نَتَنَزَّلُ إِلَّا بِأَمْرِ رَبِّكَ لَهُ مَا بَيْنَ أَيْدِينَا وَمَا خَلْفَنَا وَمَا كَانَ رَبُّكَ نَسِيًّا. That means I can't come down to you as when I have the time. No. Everything has to be allowed, ordered. He comes down to Rasulullah and he talked to him, either to review the Quran with him or to talk to him about anything else. But that is allowed. Get the permission from Allah. It's not like as and when he likes to come down. No. Everything is precise. We say, and as we are wrapping up for the Isha, inshallah, Surah Al-Fateha specifically, when you read look at the Mus'haf, you will find it Makkiyya, and some Masahif you will find it Madaniyya. Was it in Medina or was it in Mecca? Say Surah Al-Fatiha al-Wahida, the only surah that has been revealed twice. Once in Medina and once in Mecca. And that's why the ulama said it's Makkiyya Madaniyya. It's in both. It's a very special surah. But that's to know that, and Surah Al-Fatiha wasn't, as you know, the first one. The first one was the beginning of Surah Al-Alaq. اقرأ باسم ربك الذي خلق خلق الإنسان من علق اقرأ وربك الأكرم. So that was the first revelation from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Because the first one is just to get the hearts ready for the change that expected to happen. That's why a lesson to everyone, always, the people has to believe the Quran first before you tell them haram and halal. Don't block them by haram, and they are not, they're still learning ABC. And imagine this, you are telling someone ABCD and then you come on to tell him Shakespeare English. Wait a minute, he's not going to understand you. Take him step by step, and that's why 12 years in Mecca and liquors wasn't haram. And the Sahaba was drinking. And that's why لا تقربوا الصلاة وأنتم سكارى. That's in Mecca. It wasn't haram. And then when they moved to Medina, now the hearts are ready to stand for this. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make it completely forbidden. Completely. That was in Medina. And that tells you, this is a simple thing. When you teach your son, if you are a teacher with your students, teaching your son, your family, simple one by one. You don't have to give him everything. And you do not have to memorize everything. But you have to understand whatever you memorize. That's the main thing. The Quran, أَفَلَا تَتَدَبَّرُونَ الْقُرْآنِ. لأنه القرآن, mainly the Quran has messages and telling you not to do or to do. And that's the main thing. It's not the memorizing. It's the understanding. And to take whatever you understood, put it into action. Sayyidina Umar radiallahu anh memorized Surah Al-Baqarah in 8 years. And some narration actually said 10 years. Why? Why it was that way? Because he wants every single ayah that I can apply it. Very precise. So it's not the whole memorized, no, but whatever I can. Okay? Inshallah, this is an introduction And next, inshallah, Saturday, we will start with Surah Al-Fateha, inshallah, which also has many, many messages, by the way, inshallah. May Allah help us to do this one. Jazakumullah khair. Subhanallah, walhamdulillah, wa la ilaha illallah, wallahu akbar, wa la hawla wa la quwwata illa billahi al-ali al-azim. اللهم اجعل جمعنا هذا جمعا مرحوما وتفرقنا تفرقا معصوما اللهم ولا تجعل فينا ضالا ولا محروما ربنا تقبل منا إنك أنت السميع العليم اللهم وتب علينا إنك أنت التواب الرحيم اللهم ارحمنا فأنت بنا راحم ولا تعذبنا فأنت علينا قادر والطف بنا يا مولانا فيما جرت به المقادير اللهم هذا الجلال والإكرام يا حي يا قيوم انصر ضعفاءك في غزة وانصرهم في كشمير وانصرهم في كل مكان يا ذا الجلال والإكرام اللهم أرنا عجائب قدرتك إنك على كل شيء قدير اللهم يا من أمرك بين الكاف والنون يا من يقول للشيء كن فيكون أرنا عجائب قدرتك إنك على كل شيء قدير اللهم يا ذا الجلال والإكرام ارحم موتانا وموتى المسلمين اللهم اغفر للمؤمنين والمؤمنات والمسلمين والمسلمات الأحياء منهم والأموات إنك سميع قريب مجيب الدعاء يا أرحم الراحمين يا رب العالمين اللهم اهد أزواجنا واهد أولادنا وأعنهم على طاعتك وحسن عبادتك اللهم ثبتنا على ما يرضيك يا ذا الجلال والإكرام استخدمنا في طاعتك واستخدمنا فيما يرضيك وارحمنا برحمتك إنك على كل شيء قدير اللهم وآخر دعوانا أن الحمد لله رب العالمين وصلي وسلم وبارك على سيدنا محمد وعلى آل سيدنا محمد
الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله